Ohio Representative Lanese of District 23 has worked closely with Ohio animal advocates on a variety of animal welfare issues and worked to pass animal welfare legislation over the years. On the day we awarded Representative Lanese with our 2022 Legislator of the Year award, she introduced House Bill 725, a bill that decrees high-volume commercial dog breeders must have a licensed vet to perform surgical procedures such as tail docking, dew claws, dentals, and castration. We need your support to get this revolutionary legislation passed. Call or email your representatives and ask them to vote for H.R. 725.
To both honor Representative Laura Lanese with the Ohio Animal Advocates 2022 Legislature of the Year Award for the steadfast commitment to improving the lives of animals in Ohio and for the introduction of legislation that will prohibit commercial dog breeders from doing surgical procedures on dogs without any pain medication, without anesthesia, and without any veterinarian present. Ohio Animal Advocates' mission is to make Ohio a place where all animals are protected from cruelty, abuse, and neglect. Ohio Animal Advocates achieves its mission in a variety of powerful ways. We help create policies that protect animals and work to ensure that humane laws are vigorously enforced. We also establish relevant and practical solutions to take a seemingly insurmountable animal cruelty issue and basically challenging and changing entrenched systems that harm animals. We are elevating animal protection concerns from a fringe issue to one taken seriously by the public and policymakers, who are beginning to understand the deep connection between the welfare of animals and that of society overall. The problem of puppy mills in Ohio is a key issue for Ohio Animal Advocates and for citizens of Ohio who purchase their animals from pet stores. Pet store dogs are most often purchased from puppy mills, and as the Humane Society of the United States 2021 Horrible 100 report showed, Ohio is the second worst state in the nation for the care of puppy mill dogs. In fact, in the Horrible 100 report in 2021, 16 of the nation's worst puppy mills were in Ohio, and surgical procedures performed by breeders with no pain medication, with no anesthesia, or veterinarian present have been the cause of death to puppy mill dogs in Ohio. I would now like to introduce Representative Laura Lanese to describe in more detail the legislation she is introducing today.
Thank you. And, thank you everyone for being here today. I think it's extremely appropriate that we are in the Ladies Gallery, and as we look around at what some of these women were able to accomplish about 100 years ago, and to know what they were working on back then seemed radical and very difficult to achieve. And today, I'm hoping that we're going to set the precedent that animal advocacy is going to go by the wayside of not allowing women to vote, and that we can push forward on a lot of these issues and be successful. I want to thank you all for being here, for having your passion be animal advocacy and the prevention of animal cruelty. I would not be here probably without Vicki Diesner, and I'll get into more of that later. But today I'm here to introduce a bill that is the introduction of a ban for commercial breeders and puppy mills from performing surgery on dogs in their care. I have a joint sponsor on this bill, Representative Coots, who unfortunately cannot be here today, but I know he is here with us in spirit. The goal of our legislation, which does not yet have a bill number, is to clarify the confusion and possible conflict between current state law and the administrative code. Under the Ohio Revised Code, section 956.031B, in regard to high-volume commercial dog breeders, quote, if a surgical or euthanasia procedure is required, use a veterinarian to perform the procedure, unquote. However, there is a conflict with current Ohio Department of Agricultural regulations, which is OAC Rule 901, which states, quote, surgical procedures, except between 2 to 5 days of age, the removal of dew claw and tail docking shall only be performed by a licensed veterinarian. So there's an exception within the administrative code that allows that 2 to 5 day period where commercial dog breeders can can perform surgery on the dogs in their care. Typically, when there is a discrepancy between an administrative regulation and the Ohio Revised Code, the Ohio Revised Code provision will prevail. If this has not been the case, and the reason for our current bill is to dispel any confusion in interpretation. Our bill makes it completely clear that surgical procedures, and specifically tail docking, dew claw removal, and dental procedures are clearly defined as surgical procedures and can only be performed by licensed veterinarians. We hope this legislation will provide clear and concise boundaries regarding the performance of surgical and dental procedures on a dog by clearly prohibiting a person other than a licensed veterinarian from performing these procedures on a dog. Besides conforming with the intent of the statute, we know this is the right thing to do because these procedures can be excruciatingly painful if performed without the proper conditions, without the proper equipment, without the proper sanitary conditions, and by commercial breeders who have not been trained to do these surgeries. We have seen images where barbaric tools like hedge clippers, scissors, and knives have been used on dogs and know that the pain felt by these puppies and dogs is horrific. We also know that death is a very good possibility in these situations. As a society, we are better than this. Thus, we are introducing this legislation today to be part of the long history of the prevention of animal cruelty in Ohio and the United States. I want to thank you all for caring as passionately on these issues as Representative Hoops and I do, and for showing your support for the prevention of cruelty to our animals by coming out today. It is only with your support that we will be able to continue this fight and ensure that this legislation gets passed in the Ohio General Assembly. And I have to repeat that, this is only going to happen with your help. We need you to reach out to your legislators and let them know about your passion on this bill. We also need you to share that passion. Because I know when I am out there talking to people that everyone cares about animal cruelty and that what we must do in this state to stop it. So we need your help to help convey that message. Thank you for your support and time. I'll turn it back over to Vicky.
Representative Lanese is most deserving of Ohio Animal Advocates 2022 Legislator of the Year Award for her efforts in championing the passage of House Bill 263, which allows for dogs on restaurant patios, House Bill 319 designating shelter pets as Ohio's official pet, and especially for House Bill 33, which requires veterinarians, social workers, counselors, and therapists to report instances of animal cruelty. Representative Lanese worked tirelessly to build a diverse alliance of stakeholders that were needed to get House Bill 33 passed unopposed. The first time I've worked on an animal bill in Ohio in 10 years that happened, which became one of the nation's most comprehensive cross-reporting bills and increased Ohio's animal protection rating by Animal Legal Defense Fund from 30th to 24th. The cross-reporting, to put it quite simply, is a strategy that can improve the community's response to crimes against both people and animals, and may also prevent future violence. The notion of cross-reporting is that there are 4 types of family violences: domestic violence, child and elder abuse, and animal cruelty, and they rarely occur in a vacuum. They often overlap, and the commission of one of these crimes often is a red flag that other forms have occurred or will be coming next. For various reasons, animal cruelty, abuse, and neglect is often the first sentinel warning sign and the first link in the chain of family violence. If you save a pet from domestic violence, you often save the family members. We owe a great deal of gratitude to Representative Lanese for her years of commitment to passing critically humane legislation, and now for her introduction of legislation to stop breeders from horrific practices such as tail docking on puppy mill dogs. Pet lovers in Ohio truly have a dedicated friend in Representative Laura Lanese, and I'm so glad at this time to present her with our 2022 award.
Thank you for this award, but obviously most of the things have to go to this woman right here. Vicki Diesner. So I kind of cut my teeth on animal advocacy at the city council level. Some of you may be aware that I was trying to prevent a pet store from opening up in Grove City. By the time they had opened, they had already done some things they shouldn't have done. And I know that some of you are here currently fighting that fight. So my very first piece of legislation here at the State House, of course, had to be an animal rights bill. It wasn't any of the ones that Vicki had mentioned. What she didn't mention is that when we first started and we first came together was to do, well, my very first bill was actually to help veterans who were on college campuses with animal support dogs. And I soon found out that the line with animal support and pet therapy animals can be a very, very fine line. And we ended up not doing that legislation. The next piece of legislation that we looked at doing, and I worked very closely with Vicki on this, is to create an animal abuse registry. We put a lot of work and effort into that bill only to get word back that it was going to cost $500,000 to create the registry and $500,000 to keep it going each year. And we found out, we talked to people in Tennessee who have one, and they didn't have very many members on their registry, so we decided that was not a good use of legislative time and taxpayers. So that's when Vicki came to me with what became House Bill 33. And there is no stronger advocate on that issue than Vicki. And it took us 2 general assemblies to get that passed, and it was truly probably one of the bills that I am most proud of, because it addresses several issues. In addressing the issue of protecting animals from cruelty was issue number 1. But as we've seen all across the country, we see so many issues of violence where the perpetrator, as police will say, get their courage. They start harming animals, and typically the family pet, and then they escalate their violence. And we know that if we can stop them at that point in time, not only will we save the harm to that animal, we can save harm to the rest of the family, and we can save harm to society. We also know that elder abuse, we often see the case of victims who are threatened with abuse to their pet to either turn over their funds or their family member or host companion or harm their pet. We see it in child abuse. We see children who are threatened with harm to their pet. We see, a family member throw their, beloved puppy up against the wall. And we know that that child is going to have long-term damage to their mental health, as well as, possibly becoming a perpetrator themselves. We see it with domestic violence. Upwards of 50 to 70% of women in domestic violence shelters have a pet at home that they were afraid to leave, and often subjected themselves to more violence in order to protect that pet. We see it in mass shootings. Several of the most recent mass shootings, we have seen the violence start with an animal. And that animal abuse either went unreported or there weren't enough penalties to prevent further escalation of violence. We saw it recently with the 2 police shooters in Westerville. There was an animal rights violation within that family. So we know the importance of this bill, and the work cannot continue to be done. I feel like I'm the point guard of you guys out there doing all of the hard work, with Vicki taking the lead on helping with these issues as she advocates all across the state of Ohio to train on this issue and to lower the incidence of violence. I have introduced other bills. Vicki mentioned House Bill 263. I get teased a lot by some of my colleagues on that. That's the Pets on the Patio bill. And that came to me from an article in the local newspaper about people who weren't sure if it was legal or illegal, so they just started taking their dogs to sit with them on restaurant patios. The health departments, following law, decided that that was illegal. And so I was able to introduce and pass legislation to allow dogs on restaurant patios, but only if the business owner agrees. It's a win-win. Business owners are able to expand their customer base. It was during that time that it really drove home the issue of the animal-human connection and how important it is to everyone. And now when I'm in any state, and even foreign countries, when I see dogs on patios, I can smile because I know that that is now legal here in Ohio. I've also introduced a bill, it was introduced as House Bill 319, but passed as part of an omnibus bill to make the state pet the shelter pet. And the reason I did that was we know all of these dogs are languishing in shelters. And we also know that those shelter workers are extremely stressed. The volunteers are completely overworked, and so this was to shine a spotlight, sort of a fun bill, but to try to let them know that they are cared for in this state and that we recognize that this is a problem. And you'd be surprised, my daughter who's going to school in California came up on her news feed and she's like, yes, Ohio's doing something right. And so it made national news, and we were I think the second state to do that, maybe the very first state to do that. Previously, I also just introduced the bill that I have reintroduced this General Assembly, House Bill 684, which is to prevent animal remains, particularly those that have been euthanized with phenobarbital, to be included in dog food. You might be kind of surprised that that's even happening, but there have been pets that have passed away because they're being given a drug in their dog food that is meant to kill dogs. Besides the fact that it's also kind of creepy that dogs and cats are eating dog and cat remains. So we introduced that in my first term, and we reintroduced that with Representative Brinkman in this term. Finally, we have another bill coming that has yet to be introduced that I am working on, and it's a pet financing bill. So currently, if you go to a pet store, you can get a usury rate of 1,000% if you take out a loan, which many people think they're getting a credit card. They're actually taking out a loan, and the cost of their $3,000 faux poodle is actually $6,000. And they're escaping our usury laws, and we've seen this with payday lending, which we have passed legislation on, and this will fall in neatly as a subcategory of that. So that will be introduced shortly, but those are the bills that I'm working on, and again, I could not do this without this. Vicki and I actually, we talk so frequently. We're now calling each other Thelma and Louise, and it's just like, I hope we're not going over a cliff at some point, but we have become very close over this process because she is my expert, she's my go-to source. So getting this award from Ohio Animal Advocates, which Vicki is not only executive director, but she's the founder of this group, because she's been able to take her passion and to be able to leverage her network, and seeing the turnout here, she's got a great life, leverage her network and what we can do to prevent animal cruelty and pass other animal advocacy bills. So this award actually belongs as much to Vicki for all of her work alongside me in trying to get this legislation passed, so thank you.
We thank you all so much for coming today, and really do ask if, reach out to me if you haven't gotten several emails from me in the last few days, but we would ask that you reach out to your state rep and ask them please to come forward and support this bill. Thank you. And the next one is coming out.
Yeah, I
It's on Monday.